Last Saturday, in an attempt to demonstrate outrage at something, some 3 million people across the country, mostly women, participated in women's marches. The scattershot platform for the march included public funding for contraception and abortion, equal pay, protections for illegal immigrants, anti-Israel activism, and taxpayer-subsidized tampons, among other various and random causes. What united them? Hatred for the reality that Donald Trump was sworn in as President of the United States on Friday. Two contrasting images emerged from the march itself. First, people filling the streets out of pure, unadulterated, but vaguely motivated frustration. Second, some of the most egregiously perverse speeches and signage in modern political history. While the left celebrated the first image, isn't this a sign of a political uprising in the making? It ignored the second image, which is far more likely to backfire than to generate enthusiasm. That second image was promulgated by celebrities like Ashley Judd, who was once considered a frontrunner for the Democratic nomination for the Senate in Kentucky. The has-been actress raged, "I'm a nasty woman. I didn't know devils could be resurrected, but I feel Hitler in these streets, a mustache traded for a toupee. I am nasty like the bloodstains on my bed sheets. We don't actually choose if and when to have our periods. Believe me, if we could, some of us would. We do not like throwing away our favorite pairs of underpants. Tell me, why are pads and tampons still taxed when Viagra and Rogaine are not?" Okay. Meanwhile, thousands of women donned pussy hats, or pink knit caps with cat ears designed to rebuke Trump for the Access Hollywood tape in which he said he could grab women by the blank and get away with it. They marched with signs reading, "Leave my pee alone," and "If abortion is murder, then certain sexual acts are cannibalism." And this pussycat without the cat bites and she slays. NARAL Pro-Choice America handed out signs with similar messages. This reduction of women to their constituent body parts is kind of ironic, coming from the same side of the political aisle that says that men sometimes have vaginas and that some women have penises. But more importantly, reducing female priorities to killing babies and increased funding for maxi pads, it actually objectifies women. Instead of recognizing that women have all sorts of political views, instead of recognizing that many women believe they ought to be left alone by government in order to pursue their dreams, the women's marches declared government has to treat vaginal possession with a sort of victim status deserving of special protection. The suggestion that the government must guarantee special privileges for women because their biology makes them somehow lesser, or that abortion rights are necessary to achieve equality, it reduces the fight for female equality to the fight for female sameness, which is insulting to women. And it's off-putting to voters. If these women are so concerned about vulgarity, why are they embracing it? If they're so upset Trump supposedly reduces women to body parts, why promote that same silly thinking? The left tried to run the war on women in 2016. They lost. Now they're doubling down. But apparently, so long as they can pat themselves on the back for their unearned moral superiority, they'll be happy. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. So, we are here, and Donald Trump's been a very busy man, which means that we have a lot to go through. President Trump has signed a slew of executive orders. He's been extraordinarily active on Twitter, which means, of course, that gives us lots to talk about. We'll get to all of that in one moment. First, we have to say thank you to our advertisers over at Helix Sleep. So as I've said before on the program, I am an extraordinarily light sleeper. I don't tend to sleep well. Small noises wake me up. If the bed isn't comfortable, then it's hard for me to sleep, which is why I am so excited about being partnered with Helix Sleep. Helix Sleep, it's a mattress company, and what they do is you go on their website over at helixsleep.com/Ben, helixsleep.com/Ben, and they give you a questionnaire. What kind of bed do you like? Do you like it hard? Do you like it soft? Do you like it firm? Do you like it breathable? Do you like to sleep in kind of cool, or do you like it to be warm and absorb heat? Well, helixsleep.com, they then send you the mattress in the mail. And by the way, you can get a mattress that has two different settings if you're married or you have a partner, and you want the bed to have two different settings because one of you likes it soft and one of you likes it more firm. Helix can do that as well. They send it to you in the mail in a box, and then you unpack it, and it inflates automatically. And it is super comfortable. It's so comfortable that we took a more expensive mattress we had, and we actually moved it out of our room and put the Helix Sleep mattress in. It is definitely up to the quality of our sleep. They run that 3D biomechanical model of your body through their algorithms that they've created to help create the most comfortable mattress you've ever slept on. If you don't like it, by the way, you can return it. It arrives in about a week. Shipping is 100% free. You have 100 nights to try it out. And then if you don't like it, they'll pick it up for free and they'll take it away. No questions asked. So it really is no risk. It's a lot cheaper than a lot of the more expensive mattresses as well. It's a great company. We're very excited to be associated with them. HelixSleep.com/Ben, and you get $50 off your first order, which is a pretty good deal. HelixSleep.com/Ben. Make sure you use the /Ben so they know that we sent you as a way of saying thank you to them for sponsoring the program. Okay, so lots going on. So Donald Trump has been very, very active in the last 24 hours. And he's done a lot of good things, and he's done a couple of things that are not so good. So first off, the big headline of the day is that the stock market has broken 20,000. The Dow Jones Industrial Average has now broken 20,000. And this, of course, is great news. I mean, as somebody with money in the stock market, that's fantastic. And it is amazing how the entire left thought that the world would implode when Trump was elected. So if you go back to their predictions, New York Times faux economist Paul Krugman, he wrote, "This is my specialty. If the question is when markets will recover, a first-pass answer is never. Never. They'd never recover from a Donald Trump election." When Donald Trump took office, by the way, the stock market, the DGIA, the Dow Jones was at like 18,200. It is currently over 20,000. So Krugman is wrong. Kurt Eichenwald of Vanity Fair, you remember him. He's the crazy kook who was on with Tucker Carlson holding a binder and just being generally weird. He tweeted in September that in preparation for a Trump presidency, he sold all of his stocks in his kids' education accounts. And he urged everyone else to do the same, which would have been a terrible move. But it's not just kind of the kooky left. Professor Eric Zitzowitz of Dartmouth College, he said the global markets would tank by 10% if Trump was elected. The former chief economist for the International Monetary Fund said we should expect a big markdown in expected future earnings for a wide range of stocks and a likely crash in the broader market. There's a hedge fund called Bridgewater Associates. They said that if Trump was elected, the stock market would dump 2,000 points in a day. Citigroup forecast the S&P 500 would drop between 3 and 5%. Instead, by the end of the day of the election, the DGIA had risen 1.4%. The S&P 500 had risen by 1.1%. Now, all of that is great news, and it demonstrates the panic on the left is overstated. By the same token, just to be intellectually honest, which we like doing around here, the Republicans are saying this is the Trump effect. This is because of Trump, right? Kellyanne Conway tweeted out the Trump effect. Fox Business said President Trump's early policy follow-through propels Dow to 20,000. There's a problem with this logic. I was here during the Obama years. During the Obama years, in March of 2009, the stock market was at 6,600. 6,600. When he left, or when Trump was elected, it was at 18,332. So that's a 277% increase over the course of his term. Today, the stock market is at 20,051 as of the time about 40 minutes ago. That's a 9.4% increase. Well, I remember we didn't say that Barack Obama's economic policies were glorious because the stock market was doing well. So you can't change the metric for success in the middle of the game. You don't get to say stock market doesn't matter when it's doing well under Obama, but now it matters a lot when it's doing well under Trump. There's stuff that Trump's going to do that's good. There's stuff that Trump's going to do that's bad. I'm very pleased the stock market is doing well. A bit of intellectual honesty would be nice. The stock market does not generally operate based on political events like elections. It really doesn't. It operates much more based on underlying market fundamentals. The market already prices in the risks that are associated with the election of various people in the political system. When you buy a stock, you tend not to think about the politics of the situation. You tend to think about the underlying value of the company. Do you think it's overvalued or undervalued? The global economic situation, what is the stock market like in China? That sort of stuff has a much broader impact than an election, and pretending that Trump is responsible for all of the rise is just as silly as pretending that Barack Obama was responsible for all of the rise. So I just want to get that out of the way since that's the big news story of the day, and there are reasons to celebrate Trump, which we're going to get to in 1 second, but I just want to be intellectually honest about the stock market thing because I think that it's setting up a situation where next time the stock market goes up under a Democrat, then the Democrats will say the same thing, and then we'll say no, and it's just silly. It's just silly. Okay, so here's the stuff that Trump is doing that's good, and he's doing a bunch of good things. Again, you sort of have to separate Trump into what he says on Twitter and what he's saying publicly, and then what he actually does. What he's actually doing is listening to the people around him. So, for example, he is now acting on the border wall, which is what he has to do. This was, by the way, the part of his agenda I thought he was most likely to follow through on. Because Donald Trump likes building things. Big, glorious, huge things with his name on them that are golden, right? He loves that stuff. So the idea he wasn't going to build the wall, of course he was always going to build a physical barrier along the border, as well he should. He's now signed an executive order that is supposed to basically tell the executive branch to go ahead and start constructing that wall or continue constructing that wall. He also said that he was going to increase plans to hire 5,000 more U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents. That's actually low. I'd like to see that up to 20,000. Even the Gang of Eight bill, which sucked, had 20,000 additional ICE agents, Border Protection agents, not 5,000. That needs to increase dramatically. Trump has also said that he is going to withdraw funding from sanctuary cities, which certainly should be done. There's no reason the federal government should sponsor cities for violating federal law. So good for Donald Trump on all of that. Also, he's expected to limit the number of refugees admitted to the United States to 50,000 a year, down from 100,000, and impose a temporary ban on a lot of refugees. Immigration experts expect that later in the week, he's going to suspend the issuance of visas to people from countries where he can't get adequate screening. That's Syria, Sudan, Somalia, Iraq, Iran, Libya, Yemen. I'm actually shocked that it doesn't include more countries. It should probably include Afghanistan for starters. It should include Pakistan for starters. There are a lot of countries where extremism is extraordinarily high and we have a tough time screening, and putting a postponement on while we get a better screening system seems to me a basic logical thing to do. So good for Trump on that. Really, that's good stuff. Donald Trump followed through on all of that. The part that he's not following through on, apparently, is DACA and DAPA getting rid of the executive amnesty. So good for him on the wall, good for him on the border agents, good for him on sanctuary cities. Really, really good stuff, terrific stuff from President Trump on that. Good for him on postponing a lot of this immigration from countries that we can't check. That's a really positive development because we don't need more immigrants who are going to come here and participate in terror acts or support them. So that is a good thing as well. All of this is really good. It's important to mention in the context of immigration that the border wall is less significant than the DACA-DAPA executive amnesty that Obama pushed, because most of the people who are staying in the country right now are people who violated their visas. The border wall, it allows us to know when people are attempting to cross the border. Presumably you set up some sort of touch fence like Israel has so that you can determine when people are trying to cross the border. It would stop people from crossing the border without us knowing about it. But the fact is that net immigration through the southern border has actually been pretty flat for the last couple of years, despite these well-publicized kind of spikes that have been happening with people crossing the border and being captured by ICE. The real problem with illegal immigration is not people crossing the border that we don't know about. It's the fact that we know about all these people and we don't do anything about all these people. That a lot of people cross the border and then they have a baby and then they're tied here. Or they cross the border, they overstay a visa and we lose track of them. Or they cross the border and then ICE grabs them and then ICE sends them to an immigration court and then they are released on their own remand, which is ridiculous, and then they just disappear, right? That's really the big problem with immigration. That's going to be much more up to Attorney General Jeff Sessions, and we will see how he enforces the law. But as far as this sort of stuff, good for Donald Trump. Other good stuff from Donald Trump. So Donald Trump is talking about his Supreme Court picks. He mentions one guy who I think would be really good and one guy who I'm a little more dicey on. The guy who he's mentioning who's really good is a judge named his name is Neil Gorsuch. He's from the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals, and from what I have seen, he is quite good. And again, there's always a little bit of mystery about these folks because they don't rule on every issue and they don't speak out on every issue, particularly because Democrats tend to shut down anybody who speaks clearly and openly about judicial issues. If you say Roe v. Wade is the worst constitutional decision in the United States since Dred Scott and Plessy versus Ferguson and maybe Skinner versus Oklahoma, if you say that, then the Democrats will just kill your nomination. So what you get is a lot of stealth candidates, a lot of people who you don't know much about them. But here's what we do know about Neil Gorsuch if he is selected next week. And this is coming from somebody who opposed Justice Roberts. I think I was the only conservative in America who opposed Justice Roberts on the grounds that we didn't know enough about him. So here's what we know about Gorsuch. He was appointed to the 10th Circuit by George W. Bush in 2006. He has a really good legal resume, obviously, went to University of Oxford and Harvard Law School. He did clerk for Byron White and Anthony Kennedy, neither of whom is conservative, obviously. Byron White and Anthony Kennedy are not conservative, so that is something of concern. Some of his high-profile rulings, however, have been pretty textualist. So, for example, Neil Gorsuch on what is called the Chevron rule. The Chevron rule, this is obscure constitutional law now, but it actually matters a lot. Under the Chevron rule, the judiciary really does not review the rulings of administrative agencies. So if you have a run-in with the EPA has basically its own court system. And if the EPA rules against you, if an administrative court rules against you, judges typically don't overrule that. Gorsuch thinks that's ridiculous. He thinks that there's no reason why the judiciary should be able to have its power removed and handed to the executive branch. That's a good thing. Gorsuch has written a pretty sterling dissent from the 10th Circuit in the case of Hobby Lobby. So Hobby Lobby, as you recall, was a case where the federal government was trying to cram down on private companies, that these private companies had to purchase Obamacare for people in spite of their religious objections. They had to cover contraceptives in spite of their religious objections. Gorsuch wrote a really good dissent in that particular case. That one comes up. He is apparently a textualist. He is very hard on poorly written criminal law. He has talked about judicial activism and the fact that the left uses the courts in order to press forward its case. He's written a book very critical of assisted suicide. So this is somebody who tends to be more along the lines of Justice Scalia. As far as the other person who Trump is apparently considering, this is Hardiman, right? So this is Judge Thomas Hardiman, who is a U.S. District Court judge in Pennsylvania, sits on the same court as Trump's sister, apparently. He's from the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. And right now, there are people who are handicapping this as him being the front runner. Some people say Gorsuch is the front runner. I don't know anything. I don't know that Hardiman's record betrays anything particularly conservative versus not conservative. So I don't see any red flags, really. There's not a lot on substance. He's in favor of sort of tougher on crime stuff, but he's kind of a cipher to me. He was confirmed 95-0, by the way, for the Court of Appeals. Whenever somebody's confirmed 95-0, it's a good indicator that they're too much of a cipher for you to trust, right? You should actually have a certain amount of controversy with your Supreme Court nominees. Otherwise, how do you know that you're getting it right if the Democrats don't think that you're getting it wrong? So I prefer Gorsuch to Hardiman. We'll see who Trump picks on all of that. So that's the story with Donald Trump's actions. And then there's Donald Trump's Twitter. And we'll get to Donald Trump's Twitter in just a minute. Plus, you have to stick around over at dailywire.com. You have to become a subscriber and stick around because we're going to talk about the most racist, ridiculous Democratic Party town hall ever. And Trump's done so much, I talked a lot about that. But I want to get to what the Democrats are doing because that, to me, is the key to the whole political news cycle. What the Democrats are doing right now is doubling down on racism in a really severe way. And we're going to talk about that as soon as we're done here on Facebook over at dailywire.com. Go over there and subscribe. $8 a month gets you a subscription to dailywire.com. Annual subscribers still get a signed copy of my book, True Allegiance. We have a bunch of new goodies that are coming out for subscribers. The Shapiro store is due to open very, very shortly. And you get to be part of tomorrow's mailbag. You get to watch the rest of the show live, be part of tomorrow's mailbag, watch Clavin's show live, be part of his mailbag. And as I say, lots more goodies coming for subscribers behind the paywall. dailywire.com. If you just want to listen to the rest of the show, go subscribe at iTunes. Definitely subscribe at iTunes. We have now tens of thousands of subscribers. We are, of course, the most listened to conservative podcast in the United States.